And welcome back. We got a new Predecessor tier list. That's what I'm talking about. Come on down. We got GRIM.exe, baby, and he's pretty bad, I'm gonna be honest. Now, why is Grim so bad? You may be asking yourself. Well, for starters, he is a giant refrigerator who is very easy to hit with just about anything in the book. You can hit him with a hook, you can hit him with a stun, hit him with a shot, hit him with a car. He's really just a little too easy to hit. And he's a big old boy with not a lot of ways out. You know, if the enemies want you dead, your goose is probably cooked. He's not great in the duo lane. He's like okay in the mid lane, but you got way better options. And I mean, he can work in the solo lane, but you would still rather have like a big, beefy, beastly tankard in the solo. So all in all, he just doesn't really have a home. Please, for $1 a day, you too can give this poor robot and gremlin a home. And I think we're going to give him a home down here in the dumps in the D tier. Getting the new character out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump right on into this tier list. And still the best tier. And guess who's still just the best character in the whole entire game? It's Argus. That's right, he's got a stun that's just incredibly powerful. He's got a giant unmissable slow that also pulls you in. And he has an incredible slow on his ultimate. Just too much CC, too many tools at his disposal, and just too much damage. Really make Argus an absolute threat. He's a beast in the mid lane, still I think the best mid laner, still the best support likely. He's just unstoppable. You give him an inch, he takes a mile. I mean, he's just an angry dwarf that shoots lightning and lasers at you, so there's not really a whole lot else. I mean, he's still Argus, the Argus you know and love. Yes, they maybe took away 1 damage from his damage, and now it's 1 damage less, but look, you're still going to be stunned the whole time. And he's still going to be the best character. Next up in the still the best character, I'm actually going to put... Oh, where is it? Where is it? Quangnum style. That's right, big old quonger donger, quang bang schmoogie boogie is still the best. He just simply cannot be beat in the solo lane unless you just are playing out of your mind. He's the best solo laner. He's a fantastic jungler. Nearly impossible to kill. He's got good setup with his tether. He just like beats everybody in the solo lane, it seems like. If one team has a Quang and the other team doesn't, the team with the Quang is likely going to be winning the solo lane. He just seems so powerful. I'm sure you've played against it, you offlaners. You know the Quang's pure brawn and beef he brings to the lane. He's hard to trade into with his little shield bullshit lightning, just going, oh the heavens, oh my heavens, oh, oh, oh my heavens. And you next thing you know, you're going to heaven because he killed you. He's still just unstoppable. And yeah, still the best character, and still the best tier. Next up, I'm sure nobody's surprised for this one. It's going to be Lieutenant Bellica. Now, they did nerf Bellica, I'd say a little more than they've nerfed these other two, which is why she's going to just be sitting at 3rd in the still the best tier. However, she's just still the best. That stun is just... Ooh, that is the earthquake that hit New York a couple days ago. That stun is just... It'll shatter your jaw and send you back to your mama. That stun will keep you absolutely baffled, bamboozled, and at a loss for words when you get hit by it. She's able to one-shot combo characters, and they can't move the whole time. They're just stuck. She's got a lock-on, unmissable ultimate. Can drain your mana, hard to deal with, incredible in the mid lane, incredible in the support lane. Just an all-around, massive, hulking behemoth in her own right. These three characters are still the best. Not much has changed, they've been brought down a smidge, maybe they went from up here to like right here, but end of the day, they're still going to be at the top of the list. So knocking the still the best characters out of the way, let's go ahead and get started on this tier list. And next up, character here. Do a bit of looking around, a bit of pondering, a bit of gandering, even if you will. Taking a gander at the salamander, and I think top of the line at the S tier, we're going to put Big Daddy Steel. Steel for S, S for Steel. And he will steal all of the wins and take them for himself because he's just winning games. Seems like if one team has a steal and a team fight breaks out, Steel is just dominating that team fight. He's stunning who he's got to stun. He's nearly unkillable. He's putting up a wall that you can't shoot through. Just brings so much value to his team. Let's go back a little bit. Think about what makes Argus and Bellicus so good. It's, end of the day, the utility they bring in their stuns, their setup, their crowd control. And, Bellica's one of the best characters in the game, mostly because of her stun. Now, what if you gave a character 3 stuns and also made them a tank? That's going to be Steel. He's just a dominant force, a great support. He's alright in the solo lane, he's alright in the jungle, but honestly, if you just have a Steel on your team, you're going to be set, especially when the team fights roll around. He is just an unstoppable beast, and not a character you want to run into. Alright, next up on the tier list, next up on the old docket, there's a docket in my pockets. Doth beckons for the next pick. There's a couple of characters I'm looking at. I'm looking at the Richter, looking at the Greystone, Chimera. What to choose? I think we're going to put Richter up on the tier list next. Now here's the thing about Richter. He's a simple one brain cell character, and that one brain cell is hook. You want to hit those hooks. If you're not hitting a lot of hooks, you're not bringing all the value that you could be bringing on Richter. But even if you just hit a couple of those hooks, that's going to be a couple of people absolutely in the gutter, just being blasted, obliterated, bamboozled, and stomped into the ground. I think Richter is an absolute powerhouse. His shield passive on his health bar, kind of makes him hard to deal with in a lane. His hook, if it connects, is just a death sentence to anybody that gets hit by it. He's good in the solo lane, he's good in the jungle, he's great in the support role. All in all, Richter is just a beast, especially if you can hit those hooks. He's kind of an unstoppable monster. Alright, next up in the S tier here, looking at the top hitters, the characters where you just really want them on your team and not on the enemy's team. And I think next up I am going to have to look at this Chimera. I've been sleeping on Chimera a bit, saying, oh, but he falls off in the late game. Oh, but his late game's, not as good as some of these other characters. Well, his late game is still, pretty solid. And he's just such an overwhelming force of destruction for the first, 10 to 15 minutes of the game that really you can just decide the outcome of a game in that first 10 to 15 minutes. You start snowballing out of control, getting fangtooths by yourself. 7 minutes roll around, you just go off piddle-paddle in the jungle for a minute or two, get that fangtooth, and suddenly your whole team has a buff and just a little advantage over all the enemies, which is just incredible value. I'm sure all of you at home watching this video have been ganked by a Chimera over and over and have just been like, what the hell? Leave me alone. I'm just trying to farm my minions in my lane. Come on, buddy. Like, I'm just trying to live here. And you got Chimera breathing down your neck. The only thing keeping him out of still the best tier is he doesn't really have a way out of a fight, per se. He's got a way in. You know, you can jump in and rabble-babble and chop him up, but getting out is a bit trickier with Chimera. But most of the time, you don't even have to get out. You're just going in. Everybody dies. An unstoppable jungler. The best jungler for a new player to learn on, and one of the best junglers for an advanced player with years of experience to just absolutely stomp all who oppose them. All in all, Chimera's still a beast. I'd never really look forward to playing against them. I'm glad I have one on my team. Great character. Alright, next up on this tier list here. Next up on the docket. This one might be a bit controversial. I think that people are seriously sleeping on the Grey Stone. Now here's the thing, you know, you go ask your top 1% player who made the nice fancy tier list with all the editing and the smooth transitions and whatnot, how good Greystone is. They're gonna be like, oh, you know, Greystone's alright, but he's kind of falling off. But if you go talk to your regular Joe, your man's man, your average gamer, you know, your bulk of the player base of Predecessor, and ask them if they want to play against a Greystone, they're probably going to say, no thank you. I would not like to play against Greystone today. He's just a beast in the solo lane. It seems like he's just becomes an undominable force, coming over to your lane at level 14 while you're just a measly level 10. Bing bang boom, jumps on you, slows you indefinitely with the Greystone slowing build, whatever it is, where he just gets on top of you and slows you down like you're being glued in a glue trap. And he's just kind of hard to escape. He's hard to kill. He has 2 lives, a jump, can just deflect bullets without even thinking about it. Just, oh, you want to shoot him? Plink! No thank you. Deflected that bullet. Still just an overpowered, unstoppable behemoth force of nature. And all in all, not a character that I want coming over to my lane. And so, for those reasons, I still believe Greystone to be S tier. Some people may disagree with this. They'll be like, hey, yo, I can beat a Greystone. Oh, well, if I just play Argus, you know, I can beat Greystone. Sure, maybe Argus can, but a lot of these other characters, Greystone pulls up and he's gonna do his Greystone thing. Looking at the rest of the tier list here, there are a couple other characters that are kind of just jumping out to me, just calling out, please put me in S tier, I'm so good. And one of those, I think, might just be Xerus. Now, I've kind of been sleeping on Xerus for the longest time. I've been taking the NyQuil, having a wonderful long sleep on Xerus, until just recently. I've been a bit of a rude awakening. I've been woken up from my peaceful slumber, and I've played against the good Xeruses, the ones who keep caging you over and over. There's no escape from this cage. You think you're safe? Nope, you're trapped like a rat, and there's no running away. I've seen the true power this character can bring. While I think it's a little harder to play than your Greystone, you know, your Chimera, your Steels, I've seen the raw power and just overwhelming destruction destruction that Xeris can bring if you're playing him right. His Cage Ultimate Coliseum bullshit is just so powerful in a team fight or just ganking a lane, isolating someone, locking them down, trapping them like a rat. Just seems to be doing very well recently. Xeris players rejoice. Xeris is up. Check the stock markets. The Xeris stocks are through the roof right now. All in all, he is going to be a very good character. And I think looking at the rest of the tier list, that might cap out the S tier. These are characters that can just be so overwhelming and hard to deal with that it seems like they just bring a little more to the team than your regular character does. You know, Steel, he's got 3 stuns. Victor, he's got a hook that basically just guarantees you killing someone. Chimera can do the Fang Tooth in 7 minutes, easy peasy. Gravestone, he's got 2 lives and can just run you down. Saurus traps you like a rat, there's no escape, and you just see the defeat wash over yourself as you can't run away. And for those reasons, I find these characters to usually be doing very well in my games, just being unstoppable forces. You know, you can have your bad ones, sure, but it seems like a lot of the time these characters are eating, and if you're against a good one, they're just going to really give you a tough time. Alright, next up on the tier list here, at the top of the A tier, I think we're going to put our girl, Decker. Now, Decker is very good, don't get me wrong, but it seems as though she gets a bit outshined by the old Vargas here. You know, her whole thing is kind of stunning someone, locking them down, and eventually killing them. But it seems like Argus just does that a little bit better, which is going to knock Decker down a little bit. That being said, she still has incredible stun. She basically has a Xaris ultimate as just a regular ability to trap you like a rat, and just can be very overwhelming to deal with, very annoying in the lane. She can just bully you repeatedly. She's hard to lock down, has an incredible setup with her stun, with her cage, and I've seen just some crazy Decker power plays, some containment fields, just locking everyone down, not letting them do what they want to do. All in all, Decker players are up. I've been seeing Decker do pretty well. You know, still kind of gets outshined by the Argus and the Bellica, but in the mortal world of the regular Joes, Decker is still quite a strong pick. Next up here in the A tier, character I've been seeing absolutely popping off is going to be the Grux Nasty. Now, I've been in the same vein as Xeris. I've just been sleeping, slumbering soundfully on the Grux until I realized, hey, why is Grux always just an unstoppable 14-kill dominant force in my games? That's something that I have to respect. I have to note that. I'm like, oh, I can maybe fight this Grux. And you just can't a lot of the time. Grux is just going to win that fight, especially in your average player's simple one brain celled games where the whole game, all 10 players, are communally sharing one brain cell. Grux really shines. He wants to just go in and fight and just keep on fighting. And a lot of players, that's how they want to play. They just want to go in and fight and keep on fighting. And Grux, that's really where he shines. His damage is immaculate. He wins the lane against most characters and can just be an absolute powerhouse that can really just take a game by the cojones and really run with it. I've been clapped by Grux many times, despite thinking in my little feeble mind, oh, I can outplay this Grux. Oh, if I just stay outside of his effective range and keep him at a distance, oh, I can beat him. But then I get killed by the Grux and I'm like, well, I suck and I'm an idiot. Or maybe I don't suck and I'm not an idiot, and Grux is just that good. So Grux is going to be next up in the A tier for me. A very strong pick. Next up in the A tier, the character currently calling my name the loudest is going to be that Gideon. I think Gideon is still just all around a fantastic mid lane pick. He's very safe. If you want a mid laner who doesn't immediately die to Chimera every 1 minute when he ganks you, go Gideon. He has incredible wave clear, great damage, great mobility, a good teamfight ultimate. The only thing is he sort of gets outshined by the Argus, sort of gets shut down by the Bellica, and for those reasons he is going to be a little bit lower on our tier list today. That being said, he's still a phenomenal pick, one of the best mid laners, very safe, very simple. I tend to see him usually doing very well, and just an all-in-all reliable pick. Really not much else I can say. Great in team fights. If you hit a rock and it hits a couple of people, you're probably going to be winning that team fight. All in all, a phenomenal pick. Next up on the tier list, a character that I have been once again underestimating is going to be the Drongo. That's right, we're bringing Drongo up on the tier list next. Now, in the current state of the game, I do tend to find the carries being a bit underwhelming. A lot of games can be, I'm not going to say decided, but a lot of games, you know, kind of tilt the scales on who's going to win in the first 10 or 15 minutes. And a lot of the carries are kind of booty cheeks crumb butt the first like 25 minutes of a Predecessor game. So all in all, as a whole, the carries I find to be not doing as well as some of the other characters, you know, the Arguses, the Chimeras, the Greystones. But that being said, late game rolls around, they're very powerful, and Drongo brings incredible utility with his Silence Grenade. You get off a good Silence Grenade in a team fight, you're shutting down that Gideon ult, you're shutting down that Argus, you're shutting down that steal that jumped on you, and you're just getting an incredible amount of value from that. On top of that, he's great in a 1v1 against another carry. He uses his ultimate, winning the fight, got a lot of damage. He's relatively safe with his silence and his ultimate, able to kind of jump away. And all in all, I've been seeing the Drongos really rise up through the ranks and start being an absolute powerhouse. Our next absolute powerhouse I want to talk about is going to be the Murdoch. If you're just a simple gamer who just wants a gun to shoot and do a lot of damage, you're going to like the Murdoch. He's hard to gank. If you're a Chimera and you jump on a Murdoch, boom, he buckshots you away. And you're like, okay, well I'll just keep chasing him another 5 seconds and jump on him again. Oh, what's that? You jumped into a trap. He runs away again. You're like, oh, alright, I'll keep chasing him, and this time I'll get him. Jump on him again, boom. He can just run away with his turbo speed, escape the law ability, whatever it is. And I tended to see Murdochs absolutely clapping. They seem to be a very reliable, all-around carry pick. A pretty strong early game, good laning phase, good wave clear, can outpoke the other carries from a range with his passive, longer shot. And what I really find Murdoch to bring most to the team is his ultimate. A global snipe, omnipresent threat of an extra 300, 400 damage at all times on every fight in the map is an incredible value that I think often gets underestimated. You can be sitting in your lane as Murdoch farming up, seeing on the other side of the map your offlaner in an intense 1v1 fight. It's getting close, it's getting down to the wire. You just look over there with your ultimate ready, boom, suddenly you have a kill, you're up on your carry in your lane, you helped out your solo laner, and you didn't even have to bat an eye. I see Murdoch's doing very good all around, a very strong carry, great for a beginner, great for an expert, just a very powerful carry in his own right. Next up in the A tier, the third most powerful carry I want to talk about. These kind of seem to be the big three carries that give me the most trouble, that I see doing the best in general, or I've seen have the capability to just absolutely run away with a game. And next up, that is going to be the Wraith. Now, Wraith is a bit more giga brain, massive intellect, 300 IQ player who also has swag and bitches. You have to be able to hit your snipes. You have to always be looking at the map, knowing when to use your sonar wards, knowing when to go invisible, being clean with the flick shots, with the snipes, with the bada bing, bada boom, and a late game rewind from Wraith's ultimate is, in most scenarios, just a guaranteed kill, and if the game is late enough, a guaranteed kill is kind of just will get you the win at that game. I see Wraith just all around tend to be doing pretty well. He is a lot harder than these two other characters. Not everybody can be good on Wraith, but if you're even decent on Wraith, if you're good on Wraith, you're hitting those snipes, he's just an absolute powerhouse and an all-around great character. Okay, next up on the A tier list, I think we're going to put the Rampage. Now, I had Rampage much higher before. I had him at the very top. But here's the thing about Rampage, is that he kind of takes more brain and more skill than Chimera, and a lot of people, just your average Joes, don't really have what it takes to get the same impact on a Rampage as they could get on a Chimera. I tend to see a lot more Chimeras, and I tend to see a lot more Chimeras doing very well than the Rampage. That being said, he's still a very strong character. You get smacked with a boulder and you're folding like a folder. You get ulted by a Rampage, he leaps across the map, rocks you right in the face, rumbles you, crumbles you, and crumples you into a ball of aluminum foil, throwing you in the trash can and just dunking on you. I've been clacked by the Rampages, but you just don't see it as much as you see the overwhelming force of the Chimeras. The Rampages are a little more rare, especially in your average games, you know, your regular Joes playing. You tend to see the Chimera popping off, and you tend to see the Rampage a little bit less, and like usually doing alright, but the Chimeras tend to just be unstoppable behemoths. Whereas the Rampages, you know, they're just kind of doing their thing, they're fine, they're good. But all in all, I've just seen the Chimera popping off so much more that it's going to move Rampage down a little bit for me on the current meta of this tier list. And things are looking pretty good here. I think the last character I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slap Howitzer in the A tier. I think Howitzer is just an absolute menace in the mid lane. He outranges the Gideon, can often win against him. He can outrange the Bellicas and the Arguses sometimes, giving them a run for their money. He's a great mid laner, has incredible damage, can one-shot characters in the late game, relatively safe with his ultimate and his landmine, great zoning with his slowing mines thing. All in all, I tend to see Howitzer doing very well. If I'm playing against him in the mid lane, he's going to be annoying. He's going to shoot me with a rocket every couple of seconds. And all in all, it's not going to be the most enjoyable time. Howitzer players rejoice. He's up. He's doing good. He's not quite as good as the Argus or the Bellica. But all in all, still a great, phenomenal mid lane pick, and going to round out and finish off the A tier for me. Next up in the B tier here, we've got a couple of characters that I'm looking at, and I think the first one I'm going to put in there is going to be the Crunch. His name is Crunch, he likes to punch, he has giant fists, and he can double dash across the lane and catch you lacking from a mile away. Crunch, I've found, when played well, can really run away with the game, put the team on his back, and really just do it all himself. He can catch you lacking from a long distance away. You can stun you, uppercut, boom, bada bang, bada boom, hit you with the combo, 2-piece chicken nugget meal. Can I get a side of fries with that? Yeah, you're damn right, and here's your shake uppercut. And all in all, I see Crunch usually doing very good. He's a beast in the jungle, he's a beast in the solo lane. He just takes a little more finesse, a little more mechanical prowess. Then the Greystone, then the Quang, then the Grux is just a little harder to pull off, and I tend to see these characters usually doing a little bit better overall than I see the Crunch. That being said, I still think he's very strong, still in the upper 50% of characters, can really give you the business, just can be shut down a little easier. You know, he's a big boy, he's a little easier to stun, a little easier to lock down, and to really stop him from doing quite exactly what he wants to do. Next up on the tier list, I'm going to put Twin Blast. Now, this is probably going to be my most controversial placement. I think I'm going to get a lot of hate in the comments from this. But in my experience, I haven't quite been scared of a Twin Blast the same way that I'm kind of scared and have to respect these 3 other carries. I feel as though his damage output is just a little bit lower than these other 3. And yes, while he does have the dancing feet, the fancy footwork, a little more maneuverable, a little harder to gank, harder to lock down, I just feel as though he's a little less threatening than some of these other carries. I could be wrong, you know, I'm still just waiting to just get absolutely obliterated by a Twin Blast, the same way I've seen the Drongos, the Murdochs, and the Wraiths be able to just clap everybody, kill them in a couple of shots, and just be a menace. Feels like the Twin Blast, like, he kind of just tickles you. His ultimate is kind of just like a little light stream of confetti he's blowing on you. His little grenades, you know, do maybe like 10% of your health damage tops. And he really is kind of just like a tickle monster who just kind of wants to tickle you down slowly. And a lot of the meta I've found in Predecessor is not as much the tickling slowly as it is just the stun you, blow you up, one-shot you meta. It kind of seems like what the characters are, just get on top of you, you can't escape, you can't move, you can't do anything, and you die. Whereas Twin Blast is more of like a whittler, he kind of wants to whittle you down. He can be kind of annoying in the lane to deal with, but in a team fight, when the fight's breaking out, you know, would I rather play against the Murdoch, who's just going to shoot you 4 times, trap you and buckshot you and you die, or the Twin Blast, who's going to shoot you 15 times and barely do half your health damage, just kind of whittle you from afar and be just like a little dancing coward. It's kind of what it seems like the Twin Blast is. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this for sure. Comment down below why I'm wrong about Twin Blast. I think the higher in rank you go, the better Twin Blast is. But for your regular Joes, you know, your golds, your silvers, your bronzes, you've been working the 9 to 5, you get home, you're just looking to play a couple of games with the lads. Who do you want to pick? Who do I see usually doing the best? It's going to be the Drongos, the Murdochs, and the Wraiths. Twin Blast can still work, you know, he can still be alright, but I tend to not be as scared of the Twin Blast as I am of some of these other carries. And that's why I'm going to be putting him a bit down in the B tier here. Next up in the B tier of a B tier hero, I'm looking at the Kalari, looking at the Countess, looking at the FaZe, the Muriel, the Narbash. I think next up here, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Next up here, I think we're going to put FaZe. Now, I've kind of been underestimating FaZe, you know, I view her as a free kill a lot of the time, but that's usually because they're connected to a carry who just absolutely is so dumb and bad. But if you get a good carry linked to a phase, they can kind of just run away with the game, the two of them. The thing about phase is it's a little harder to solo carry a game on phase as it is compared to like the Richter. You know, you hit the greasy hooks, probably gonna win that game. The Argus, the Bellica, you can kind of just put the team on your back and do things yourself, just kind of like, fine, I'll do it myself type characters. Where phase is more of a team worker, you really want to funnel your energy into another player and hope that they are good enough to carry both of you. That being said, she's very annoying in the lane with her enormous root laser beam Kamehameha. Her ultimate is very good for taking objectives, for winning team fights. She's really good at taking your brain dead, one neuron firing carry who's just in the worst, most stupidest spot you've ever seen them. Just pulling them out to safety, just being like, oh buddy, hey, what's that twin blast? You jumped into the Chimera and steal melee range? Let me go ahead and just pull you out to safety. I've been seeing FaZe get a good bit of value, and all in all being a pretty solid pick. And for these reasons, I'm going to give her a B tier. Taking another look at this tier list here, I think next up, I'm going to put the Narbash. Nope, I'm going to put the Muriel. I think that Muriel and Narbash, and FaZe, to be honest, I kind of view them all three in a similar vein, where, yes, they bring something valuable to the team. You know, they bring a good thing each. You know, FaZe brings her healing and her ability to get a carry out of a sticky spot. Muriel brings her shielding, her ability to turn around a team fight, her global rotation with her ult. Narbash brings the movement speed, the healing, the stuns. These are all good things, but they're just not what Steel and Richter are bringing. They're just not what Argus and Bellica are bringing. And for that, they're a little bit lower. I feel like you see the Narbash against the Richter, and the Richter's usually winning that engagement 9 times out of 10. The Muriel, the FaZe, you know, you can see them popping off and enabling their team, but it's a little more rare, it's a little less common and just like regularly clapping as these other characters. And for that, we're going to put them in the B tier. Still good, still, you know, do what they want to do, just get a little outshined by some of these top dogs up here. And I think last off on the tier list here, I think I want to put the Countess. I'm actually going to start off the C tier with the Countess. Countess for C tier. I might get a good bit of hate for this, a good bit of flack. The same thing as the Twin Blast and Joyas, who are just absolutely pissed, like, hey, my character's the best in the game, how could you put them so low? I just tend to see the Countess struggling a good bit of the time in the jungle. You know, I'm not really scared of a Countess jungle for the first, like, 15 minutes of a game. I'm not really scared of the Countess mid lane or the Countess solo for the first, again, like, kind of 15 minutes of the game. She's kind of a pushover, tends to be bullied, tends to kind of get pushed behind. You know, when late game rolls around, though, or if Countess gets a couple kills under her belt, she can really snowball a game, start one-shotting characters, just doing disgusting amounts of burst damage, and really run away with the game. But all in all, I'm just not seeing it as much as, you know, some of these other more consistent picks. She used to be a little inconsistent. Like, when the Countess is fed and hard carrying, she's just S tier. She's super strong. But, you know, the Countess who's kind of even, the Countess who's kind of behind, tends to just be a wet noodle in a fight, easy to work around. And I tend to see the Countesses just not doing as great as some of these other mages in the mid lane. Not doing as great in the jungle as, you know, the Chimeras, the Greystone, the Zaruses, the Quangs. And I don't know, I could be wrong here. Comment down below that I'm wrong. But I just haven't really seen the Countess shining recently like I feel like she would need to in order to merit a higher placement. The amount of games I've seen just hard carried by a Grux, or by a Argus, or a Quang, or a Greystone, or a Chimera, are so much more prevalent, so much more of a regular occurrence than the Countess games. You kind of have to be better than who you're against when you're playing Countess if you want to win. You kind of have to outplay them. You have to, maneuver and think and know the cooldowns, know the distancing. And for that, she's just going to get a C tier. A fine tier. They can do really well, but they can also kind of fall behind and not do that great. A similar character, a similar vein to a Countess, is going to be the Kallari. I've seen the Kallaris pop off and carry, but it's pretty rare if I'm being honest. I've seen a lot more Kallaris just kind of do nothing for the first 20 minutes of the game, not really ganking, not really getting the Fang Tooths, just letting Chimera do whatever he wants, while the Kallari's kind of just off, not really providing much value to the team. I think the higher in rank you go, the better the Kallari gets. But that being said, it just seems like Chimera just brings so much value in the jungle with an ease of use that Kallari does not have. You kind of have to be a specialist for these C tier characters. You gotta really know what you're doing, really know the matchups, really know how to make them work. And all in all, they just aren't quite clapping as much as some of these other characters are, and I tend to see them underperforming a good bit of the time. Next up in the C tier, I think we're going to put the Fang Mao. Fang Mao, I've kind of been sleeping on. I had him pretty close to the bottom before. I am moving him up a little bit. I think he is in a similar vein as the Kallari and the Countesses, just a fine pick. They can pop off. I've seen it. I've, been against the good Fang Maos who are a threat who I have to respect. But I've also seen, the Fang Mao solo lanes just getting dumpstered by the Quangs, by the Greystones, by the Gruxes, going 0-8, just having a hard time. All in all, I'm just not seeing the same consistent level of carrying from these characters as I am from some of these characters. They can still do it, you can still pull it off, but I feel like the C tier characters, you kind of have to put a more nuance, more practice into them, a little more skill, a little more perfection to pull them off, to get the same amount of value as some of these characters get without really trying too hard. That being said, the C tier is still a fine pick. It's still a fine character, Fang Mao. Don't get your pipe in a wad. You're still doing just fine. But all in all, I tend to see them getting outshined a lot by some of these other characters. And these are kind of characters where, if they have a lead, they're scary. But if they're kind of just on the same tier as you, they're pretty average. They're not OP. They're not underpowered. They're kind of just fine. A fine pick in the middle. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too bad. Just kind of it is what it is. It's a character. Next up in that vein, I think, is going to be the Seraph. Now, I, along with a lot of other new players, first to the game, you see the Seraph popping off, clapping everybody. You're like, wow, this character has to be OP. But the more and more you play Predecessor, the more and more your eyes kind of open up to the meta, to the flaws of this character, seeing them, kind of underperforming when compared to the Chimera, when compared to the Greystone, to the Quang. These characters with a lead are all very scary in their own right. If you're playing them perfectly, if you're outskilling your opponents, they can be very potent, very powerful. But all in all, if they're even with you, if you're both like level 10, have the same amount of farm, they're kind of just like okay, mediocre characters who can tend to kind of be outshined by some of these very strong ones. That being said, you can still pop off with the Seraph, you can still absolutely dominate, gank the hell out of people, just do so much damage, really just outplay people with your invulnerability, your flight, your slow. She has a lot of tools at her disposal, but I just haven't seen the same reliable, consistent domination from these characters that I see from a lot of these other top hitters. And for that, they're just kind of an average, middle of the road. They can do very well. They can also do not that great C tier pick. And looking at the rest of these characters here, I think that might do it for the old C tier. I think that might do it for the C tier. And now we're moving kind of down into the dregs. And I'm actually going to, I think, move Grim even lower, down to the F tier, to make room in the D tier for the Sevarog. Now, I think Sevarog can be very strong in late game, don't get me wrong, but his early game, he's kind of a pushover. He's not the biggest threats in the solo lane. He can hit some good ganks from the jungle, but oftentimes you're kind of going to be better off with the Quang. I feel like Quang does a lot of what Sevarog wants to do. He just does it kind of better and easier. Sevarog, you kind of have to outplay people to beat them. You have to kind of bide your time in the early game and just survive. Get your stacks up. A lot of your average players, you're just regular Joes, middle of the road, just your rambling, gambling dudes who just looking to play some games, are going to be the best at last hitting. Sevarog is all about last hitting, getting his stacks up, getting to your maximum stacks as soon as you can. And I tend to see the Sevarogs not really doing that great in your average games, just your regular Joes. You see the Greystones popping off, you see the Quangs just clapping, the Gruxes just being beastly, but you kind of see the Sevarogs kind of just surviving and like biding their time, getting by. Late game, he can still be a beast, but late game, kind of all of these characters are beasts. Like a late game, I don't know, Argus is really just gonna give you the business. And all in all, I think Sevarog is a little underwhelming in the current meta. He just takes a little too much effort to get the same value that a Quang would get. All in all, I think he could use a little bit of love. That being said, can still be very strong, can still do what he's got to do, and do it all right. And all in all, he's going to just kind of be in the D tier for me. Next up in the D tier, I think we're going to put the Gadget. Now, here's what keeps Gadget in the D tier for me, is I'm just not really ever scared of a Gadget is the thing. Like, you see the Argus pull up on you or the Bellica, you're like, oh, I gotta not get hit by that stun or I'm gonna die. You see the Gadget pull up, you're like, oh, what's she gonna do? Throw a hat at me that does like maximum 20% of my health? I don't know, she's just not really that threatening, just not that scary to me. She's fine, but I think a little underwhelming when compared to some of the other mages. Kind of just seems like a less impactful Gideon, like she has big circle abilities, but Gideon just, his abilities hit harder. You get hit with a rock late game, that's doing half your health. You get hit with a Gadget Sticky Mine late game, that's doing like a quarter of your health, maybe a third. He just hits harder, and he has 2 rocks. She has 1 Sticky Mine. and I just haven't seen gadgets much, and when I do see them, they're not really popping off as hard as some of the other characters. Next up, we're going to put the Kira. I think Kira is, you know, okay. She's fine. She's salvageable. These characters are still fine. They're alright. But she just kind of gets outclassed by the Drongos, the Murdochs, the Wraiths, even the Twin Blasts. She's just, I don't know. I think her early game wave clear is not the best. She doesn't really provide much, like, else on top of that, other than her ult can be kind of good in a team fight with a combo. You can hit some like cool combo ultimates, maybe like a Faye ult and a Kira ult. I've seen that do good, but outside of her ult and just like the rest of her kit seems to just kind of be a little underwhelming. Not quite as potent as some of these other carries. All in all, I'm never too scared of the Kira. Like, you still have to respect these characters. You know that they can do some stuff. But are you going to be scared of them the same way as you're going to be, like, Chimera, the Drongo, the Murdoch? I'm just not seeing it as much. In your regular Joe games, I think she's, you know, okay, but a little underwhelming when compared to some of these other characters. And next up here, I think I'm going to actually put the Grim at the end of D tier. I think that Grim is pretty bad. He's got a good bit of tools at his disposal. You can play him kind of funky, catch some people lacking. I think late game, if you displacement blast and ult somebody with the right build, you can one-shot him, which is incredible value. Something that a lot of other characters cannot do is kill from that range that Grim can. But it just takes so much work to get there. Seems like he loses to almost all of the other carries in the duo lane. You really have to outplay people in the mid lane if you want to play him mid to pull him off. It seems like you just gotta put in a little extra work with these characters to get the same amount of value that some of these other ones get. That being said, you can still pop off with them, you can still make them work. They're not terrible, they're not horrible. But in my games, you know, do I usually see them doing well? I don't. If I'm being honest, I just usually don't see them doing that great. And for that, they're going to be going in D tier. Which brings us down to the bottom of the barrel, the F tier. Starting things off in the F tier, I think I'm going to put Shinbi at the top of the F tier. Now, Shinbi is kind of similar to Sevarog without all the tankiness, in that her early game just absolutely blows. She's a kind of like a late game scaling character. In a lot of games, you know, I'm a broken record here, but a lot of games are kind of decided in the early game. One team gets a big lead, they get a couple Fangtooths, they get a couple levels leads, they're usually going to run away with that game. Yes, there's, you know, there's comebacks, there's crazy stories where your team is like 0-20, but you clutch out a team fight 40 minutes in, you're still holding on, and you come back for the win. But those are rare, and most of the time I see Shinbi absolutely sucking. If I have a Shinbi on my team, I'm just like, welp, we're probably not going to win this one, boys. Shinbi jungle is bad, she just can't gank. Shinbi solo lane, I always see them losing and just spamming need help. Oh, gank my lane, need help, gank my lane, I need help. Just not doing great, not bringing the same value that a Greystone would, or a Grux, or a Quang. I don't know, I just see the Shinbi kind of lacking a lot of the time and not being great. Next up in the lacking and not being great department, I'm gonna put the Morgesh. Now, I have seen, you know, some Morgeshes pop off, as well as I've seen some Shinbis pop off, but a lot of the time they kind of seem to be a bit underwhelming. You have to kind of just be better than whoever you're against to pull these characters off and make them work. Morigesh is, a noob stomper, sure, if they don't know what her ult does or how she works. You can get away with some mean stuff, you can get a lead on her. But the thing that kind of brings Morigesh back is you gotta get a little too close to get your mark off. And if you get, too close to the Argus, he's just gonna stun you, trap you in his crystal, send you back to the death timer. You get a little too close to Quang, he's gonna do the same business. Get a little too close to Bellica, she's gonna knock you up. Boom, bam, bada bop, boom. One shot, pow. You're clapped. I just haven't seen the Morigeshes doing that great on average. She's doesn't have the best wave clear, not the best at killing objectives, not the best in a team fight, very single target focused, and just has to get a little too close for comfort to make her work. All in all, I just haven't been seeing the Morigesh really pop off that much. Next up, we're going to put Iggy and Scorch. Before I had Iggy and Scorch as the worst character in the game, but he's been buffed up a little bit, and I am slowly seeing more Iggy and Scorch rise into the meta. I've seen a couple of Iggy's pop off, seen a couple of Iggy's do pretty good, be annoying. That being said, most of the time Iggy's still kind of a free kill, still just easy to gank, easy to shut down. I'm never really scared of an Iggy. I'm just like, okay, buddy, sure, do your oil slick, but you're still gonna die. End of the day, he's still pretty easy to gank, easy to shut down, easy to kind of bully. And, sure, he's annoying in the lane, but a lot of other characters are just kind of better every way. Iggy and Scorch is going to be down in the F tier. Next up in the F tier, I am going to put the Sparrow here. Now, what makes Sparrow so bad is that she just has no real mobility. She's kind of like a sit and fight type character, where you just gotta commit. But time and time again, I see the Sparrows just getting ganked repeatedly, dying so many times, going 0-10. Just absolutely getting clapped. The late game Sparrow does have an obscene amount of damage. The Sparrow linked to the phase late game, it's going to shred through a lot of characters. But you can kind of just stun the Sparrow, shut her down real quick before she can do anything. And she kind of just seems a little too easy to lock down and kill in a team fight. And most of the time I tend to see Sparrow lacking, getting, put behind, getting bullied, getting harassed, not really bringing that much to the fight. We're kind of in a mobility, jump on you, stun you, burst you down, get on top of you meta, and Sparrow doesn't really have any of that. And so she is going to be in the F tier for me. Next up in F tier, I'm going to have Faye. F for Faye. I just, I've seen one good Faye ult in my history of playing Predecessor, and they got a team wipe with it. There was the Faye Kira ult combo. It was absolutely disgusting. But that's happened one time. The amount of times I see Faye just get bullied in the lane, be absolutely useless, never rotate, never gank, never provide any value to her team, has no mobility, no escape, is just too common to put her any higher on the tier list. I'm just seeing the Faye get absolutely clapped time and time again. Not doing great. All in all, just seems like she doesn't have enough damage to be a real threat until the super late game. She hits the ult combo, full combo somebody, maybe it kills them. But even then, I don't know. I feel like Faye, most of the time, all of the time, I look forward to playing against them. I'm like, yes, they have a Faye. We've won this game. I can take it easy. I can just cool it. Don't have to try too hard. Usually going to be an easy win. And last and least on the tier list is going to be the Revenant. Now, Revenant is so cool. I love him. I want him to be good. but he's just not. My first game of Predecessor I ever played, I picked Revenant. I went Revenant mid lane against an Argus. I got absolutely dumpstered. I was like, wow, do I really just suck at this game that much? No, I don't. It turns out that Argus is the best character in the game, and Revenant is the worst character in the game. And here's why Revenant's the worst character. There's a couple of reasons, really. His early game wave clear is abysmal. His poke in a lane is like almost non-existent. He has no mobility, he kind of has the Sparrow syndrome of not able to get away. I tend to see the Revenant just losing the duo lane time and time again. Sure, a late game Revenant can pop in for some damage, but getting there is so hard. I often see them just getting crushed into the ground, not able to kind of get where they need to go, not able to get those items online, get off the ground and start clapping. All in all, tend to see these characters usually kind of doing ass and not doing great. These characters, you know, most of the time are kind of getting outclassed by others, but they can pop off. I've seen them do well. These characters they're fine. You know, I usually would rather a different character on my team, but I've seen them do well. I've been killed by them before. I've seen them be unstoppable. These characters are usually decent. They're pretty good at what they want to do. They can be kind of shut down though. They're like mild threats. These guys are pretty decent threats. You know, they're gonna do what they gotta do and do it very well. Just being absolute powerhouses. These guys are just top of the line. They do what they gotta do very well all the time. Just reliable, consistent winning, and consistently I'm scared of them. Consistently they're just very powerful and doing good on a regular basis. And these characters are still just the best. Hard to beat. Just bring OP amounts of bullshit that just outshadows the rest of these other characters, really outshines them. So yeah, that's the tier list. I hope you enjoyed my rambling, my hour-long late night rambling, gambling, and kind of just brain flapping, just flapping my gums, telling you what I think. This is the tier list. I've consulted with the Predecessor Challenger Circuit Prime PCC League, whatever it's called. You know, I'm seeing what they're picking, and they're picking the Argus, they're picking the Quang, they're picking the Bellica. These are kind of the top contested picks. You're not really seeing a whole lot of this, and when you do see this, they usually kind of get clapped, get dumpstered. I'm taking this tier list from kind of like internally inside, just how I feel. To make a true tier list, you first must look inward into yourself and truly understand yourself before you can understand the meta and the tier list. And I think this is a pretty accurate tier list. I would take this to the bank, make a deposit, and get $1 million for it. If you're new to Predecessor, this is a great tier list for you. If you're a veteran in Predecessor, I'm sure you can see the merit of this tier list. You probably agree with a good bit of it. You know, you might be hating on me for the Twin Blast placement. But all in all, I think this looks pretty good. Maybe I'd move Grim down a bit. I could see him down here in the F tier. I could see Seraph moving down a bit. Maybe you could move the Twin Blast up a little, but I just don't see Twin Blast doing all that great in my games usually. Yeah, this is the tier list. You know, it's you can maybe do a bit of fudging, a bit of maneuvering. But all in all, I think it's going to look a little something like this. I think that looks fine. That looks alright to me. It's going to look a little something like this. This is the tier list. Thanks for watching. You can still play these characters. You just kind of have to be better than who you're against to make them work. You have to be a little more practiced, a little more, you know, a little more pizzazz. Then you just pick Quang and just spam your heavens and win. These you kind of have to like know what you want to do. You have to play it perfectly, position very well, use your wards, be really on top of it, just to get the same level of impact that these guys get with very little effort. But again, thank you for watching. This has been my tier list. I'm absolutely blown away by the support and love I got on my first tier list. Nearly at 8,000 views right now, which is just absurd. That's the most views I've ever had on a YouTube video. I'm just a humble 100 subscriber channel, you know, doing this for fun, just doing a little something, you know, just try to help the people out. I got a lot of friends I'm getting into Predecessor, and they're like, yo, who should I play? Who's good? Should I play Shinbi? Should I play Revenant? I'm like, buddy, you're probably better off going Quang or Murdoch. So this is for you. This is for your regular Joe, your average player, your Jolene, your Jonette. You're just regular gaming type specimen. So thanks so much for watching. That's been enough of just air and gas releasing from my mouth and just spewing nonsense and gibberish. Comment down below what you would change. Comment down below, I hate you, I love Twin Blast, you're stupid big dumb gum Dumbo. Thanks for watching, hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next episode.